The day Vanessa Collins screamed at a black waiter in the middle of a five-star restaurant should have ended with an apology or a scandal. Instead, it detonated a truth she'd spent her whole life paving over with privilege. In minutes, her nonverbal autistic son spoke his first sentence in years, not to her, but to the man she tried to have fired. What she didn't know, what no one in that room knew, was that the man in the apron wasn't just some waiter with a soft voice and a sharper mind. He was a scientist, a brother, and a man with a reason to dismantle the empire her fortune was built on. Because this wasn't just a story about prejudice, it was about a countdown, a hidden code, a corporate secret, and whether love for one child could undo the damage done to dozens. What happens when the truth wears a name tag and still gets ignored? Keep listening. This one cuts deep. But first, leave a comment below to let us know where you are watching from, and if you like fascinating stories like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we have another incredible story, and there are many surprises waiting for you in the next parts. Get that man away from my son, now. Her voice sliced through the dining room like a diamond in a blender, sharp, gleaming, and meant to wound. Vanessa Collins didn't raise her voice often, but when she did, it came wrapped in pearls and backed by a billion-dollar real estate empire. The Alligium, an elite downtown restaurant where even the lobster had an assistant, went still. Waiters froze mid-pour, conversations died like they'd been unplugged, and all eyes landed on the scene unfolding near table 1, a boy shaking, a black waiter kneeling, and a mother unraveling in couture. Lucas, age 7, was locked in a meltdown, head banging the linen-covered table, whispering numbers in reverse, eyes frantic and unreachable. And there was Marcus, the waiter, crouched beside him like a lighthouse in the fog. He wasn't touching the boy, just drawing symbols on a napkin with slow, intentional calm. 7, 6, 5. The boy stilled, the sobs stopped, the room held its breath. But Vanessa saw none of that. All she saw was someone low on the payroll, too close to someone she'd paid too much to protect. "I don't care what kind of diploma he forged," she barked. "Who gave him permission to touch my son?" Pierre, the maitre d', tried to intervene, stammering about Marcus's training, about alternative communication techniques. But it didn't matter. Vanessa's voice carried more weight than reason. Marcus rose to his feet slowly, eyes steady, dignity unshaken. "I apologize for the intrusion, Mrs. Collins," he said. "Your son was exhibiting echolalia, repeating number sequences to self-regulate. I simply created a visual anchor to support him." And just like that, the air shifted. Because Vanessa knew that term. She'd paid a specialist $5,000 to explain it last year. But hearing it here, now, from a man in an apron, it landed like a slap. Then came the voice no one expected, soft, trembling, and 3 feet tall. "Stay," said Lucas. One word, one miracle, 2 years of silence undone by a man who wasn't even supposed to speak. The restaurant gasped, a spoon clattered to the floor. Vanessa blinked, her spine straightening as if reality itself had just corrected her posture. Before she could respond, the manager swept in. "Mr. Marcus, my office." Now, he turned to Vanessa, all charm and apology. "We deeply regret this incident, Mrs. Collins. The employee will be disciplined." But Marcus wasn't shrinking. He unbuttoned his vest calmly and laid it on the table like a final move in a chess match. "Don't bother," he said. "I quit. Some places don't deserve the best of us." And with that, he walked, pausing only to slide a business card beside the napkin. Vanessa picked it up. Embossed. Elegant. Dr. Marcus Washington, Ph.D., Behavioral Neuroscience. And just like that, the most powerful woman in the room realized she'd been outplayed by the only person who never needed to raise his voice. But what Vanessa didn't know, what none of them knew, was that this waiter had just opened the first crack in an empire built on silence. It had been 3 days since the incident at Alligium, and Vanessa Collins had stopped sleeping like someone with nothing to hide. The house was quiet, too quiet, and the card still sat exactly where she'd placed it, on the edge of her nightstand, daring her to pick it up. a small rectangle of truth that pulsed like a nerve exposed to cold air. Every morning, she woke up to that name. Dr. Marcus, not waiter, not employee, doctor, specialist, someone who knew things no one else had ever gotten close to understanding about Lucas. She used to move mountains with a signature and a stare. Now she couldn't even lift her own hand to dial a phone number that could change everything. And that silence? It wasn't peaceful. It was judgmental. A house this large shouldn't feel like it's staring at you, but somehow it did. And in every reflective surface? Marble counters, glass railings, touch-screen appliances. Vanessa saw the same thing. A woman with power, but no authority where it mattered most. On the fourth day, Elizabeth came by. She didn't call first. She just appeared, like real friends do, sliding through the mansion doors with the kind of determination usually reserved for cardiac surgeons and sisters. They watched Lucas from the second-floor window, where he sat alone in the garden, tracing number sequences in chalk on the pavement again. No words, no humming, just numbers. Again, "You need to call him," Elizabeth said quietly, arms crossed. Vanessa didn't answer. "He spoke," Elizabeth pressed. "To him?" "Your son spoke to him." Vanessa's eyes never left the window. And then stopped again, she said, voice barely more than a breath. Elizabeth turned sharply. "Is pride your prison or your excuse?" That landed harder than Vanessa expected. Because it wasn't pride, not entirely. It was fear. Fear that someone else had done in minutes what she couldn't buy in 2 years. Fear that what she'd built was rotting underneath. And fear of something deeper she couldn't name. "You're not afraid of him," Elizabeth said. "You're afraid he sees through you." That was truer than either of them wanted to admit. That night, after the house had gone dark and her emails had gone ignored, Vanessa opened her laptop. Not social media, not LinkedIn. Real searches, real names. She typed in Marcus Washington. At first, the results were simple. Lectures, interviews, academic panels. Then it got dense. Harvard at 22, Stanford at 26, a resume carved from the stars. Behavioral neuroscience, nonverbal communication, recognized in 3 countries, peer-reviewed articles in journals she couldn't even pronounce. And then the deeper cut. Jason Washington, his younger brother, diagnosed with severe autism, died at Horizon Clinic during a high-risk experimental treatment. Vanessa's blood ran cold. She clicked the link again. Horizon Clinic, a division of the Collins Medical Research Trust. Her trust? Her company? Her paperwork. She felt the screen tilt, not literally, but in that emotional vertigo kind of way, like standing too close to the truth and realizing there's no railing. The man she'd tried to fire had once lost a brother under the care of the very facility her board controlled. Marcus hadn't wandered into her life. He had tracked it. She sat back in her chair, trying to breathe, but there it was again. That feeling in her chest. Not panic, not guilt. Dread. The slow, sticky dread that creeps in when you realize your story isn't the whole story, that maybe you are the villain in someone else's script. The word revenge curled in her gut like a smoke signal she couldn't ignore. Had she really just tried to destroy a man who was working to save her son? Or was this all part of his plan? Marcus hadn't been serving her wine. He had been studying her, watching Lucas, connecting dots, laying groundwork. It wasn't help, she whispered to herself. It was reconnaissance. The thought made her dizzy, because if he was here for retribution, what would that mean for Lucas? For the company? For her? But beneath the fear, something else stirred, something she didn't want to name but couldn't suppress. Respect. Because only someone who had lost everything could walk into her restaurant with that kind of stillness. Only someone with a wound deep enough to hollow them out could kneel beside her son and listen instead of lecture. She had spent 2 years hiring the best, the highest rated, the most expensive, and yet none of them, not one, had gotten Lucas to say anything other than static. Marcus had entered her life like a glitch in the system. But the more she thought about it, the more it felt like he was the system, hers, coming undone. She opened her drawer, pulled out the card again, and this time she held it a little longer. Not to dial, not yet, just to feel its weight. Because that's what truth does when it sits in your hand. It weighs more than you expect. And as Vanessa stared at the card in her hand, one truth became clear. This wasn't over. It was only just beginning. Vanessa Collins hadn't parked her own car in over a decade. She didn't even know where her estate kept the valet keys. But that morning, she sat behind the wheel of her own imported SUV, hands gripping the leather like it was a steering wheel or a weapon, maybe both. No assistant, no driver, no security team trailing behind like ghosts in suits. Just her, a pair of dark sunglasses, and a silence thick enough to bruise. She didn't go to the office. She didn't go to the mansion. She drove to a cafe no one would recognize, tucked between a laundromat and a failing bookstore in a part of town her GPS didn't even know to respect. Neutral ground, untraceable, the kind of place where power didn't matter, where, for the first time in years, she walked in with nothing but her name. And even that felt too heavy to say. Marcus was already there, seated at a small table near the window like he'd been waiting for this moment long before she ever admitted it needed to happen. No uniform, just jeans and a clean blue shirt, sleeves rolled up, hands resting calmly on the table like they had nothing to hide. He didn't stand when she approached, didn't extend his hand. He just looked at her, those same unblinking eyes that had watched her son scream. Then speak. "Thank you for coming," she said, pulling out the chair opposite him. "I didn't come for you," he replied. "I came for Lucas." The silence that followed sat between them like a third party neither of them trusted. "You knew who I was," Vanessa said finally. "From the moment Horizon accepted my son, from the moment you took that job at the restaurant, it wasn't coincidence." Marcus's face didn't change, but the corner of his mouth twitched just enough to say what his lips didn't. "Of course it wasn't." "You really believe in coincidences, Miss Collins?" he asked, calmly sipping his coffee. "Or do you just hire consultants to explain away damage as market variability?" Vanessa's jaw locked. "Why should I trust a man who stalked me with a napkin?" Marcus leaned in slightly, lowering his voice but sharpening its edge. "Because your son is being harmed by your profits." That one hit like a slap. Like a verdict. "You think I did this on purpose?" she snapped. "I think you didn't ask enough questions," he replied. "And that silence you've been trying to fix with money, it has a source. One that wears your logo." For a moment neither of them spoke. Marcus reached into his pocket, not fast, not sudden, and pulled out a folded page, sliding it across the table. "This is the countdown your son kept writing. You thought it was a meltdown pattern. It's not. It's a message." Vanessa unfolded it, eyes narrowing, numbers, shapes, a complex sequence that twisted and curled like a language she'd never learned to speak. "What does it mean?" she asked, barely above a whisper. "It's code," Marcus said. "Not gibberish, not randomness, it's structured logic. Lucas is using math the way poets use rhythm. This is him asking for help. It's also him documenting what the treatments are doing to his brain. He's a genius trapped inside a faulty protocol. You think he's recovering?" "He's adapting, surviving." Vanessa felt her throat tighten. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" Marcus exhaled slowly. "Because Horizon is a machine built to harvest results, not children. They show you charts, reports, improvement scores, but none of it is neutral. And your board is too eager to see success. They're not looking at the long-term neural cost." Vanessa looked down at the page again. The lines blurred, not from confusion, from grief. "What do you want?" she asked finally. "I want full access to Lucas's records," Marcus replied. "I want unrestricted freedom to treat him. I want every file Horizon has on him. And I want the truth, not scrubbed, not sanitized." She looked up, heart thudding in her ears. "And if I say no?" Marcus didn't blink. Then you'll keep watching your son disappear. One layer at a time. The silence was thick now, sticky. Vanessa closed her eyes for a moment, replaying Lucas's voice in that restaurant, the way he had said, "Stay," the way he had reached for Marcus like he'd known him his whole life. She had built companies on instinct, but here her instincts had failed her. She didn't trust Marcus, not fully. But she loved Lucas, more than she feared being wrong, and for the first time since her son's diagnosis, she felt like someone was finally telling her the truth without billing her for hope. "My driver will bring your contract tomorrow," she said, standing. "But know this, Dr. Washington. If I find out this is about revenge, if you're using my son as some kind of pawn for your brother's death, there is no place in this world where you can hide from me." Marcus didn't respond immediately. He reached beneath the table and clicked something off with 2 fingers. A tape recorder. Vanessa's stomach turned. Of course he'd been recording. Of course he came prepared. But it wasn't the act of recording that shook her. It was that he turned it off now. At the moment, she agreed. That meant the real conversation was just beginning. That meant he didn't need leverage anymore. He had something stronger. Purpose. "This isn't revenge," Marcus said softly. "It's rescue." And in that dim cafe on a quiet street, 2 adversaries stood up from the table, no longer enemies, but not yet allies. The chessboard was set. And Lucas, he was no longer a piece. He was the reason the game mattered at all. Because when the truth walks out of the room holding your child's future in its hands, you don't chase it. You follow. Vanessa didn't flinch when Elizabeth barged into her office without knocking. That alone said everything. Elizabeth Montgomery wasn't just a neurologist or an old college friend. She was the only person who could still get past Vanessa's fortress of control. And when she slammed a flash drive down on Vanessa's desk like a gavel, Vanessa knew instantly this wasn't a social call. "What do you know about Jason Washington?" Elizabeth's voice wasn't angry. It was worse. It was disappointed. Vanessa leaned back, trying to buy time with posture. "Marcus's brother died during treatment at Horizon. I read the incident summary." Elizabeth's eyes narrowed. "No, you read what you were told to read. I've been digging. What I found, it's not an incident, it's a crime." Vanessa hesitated. She reached for the flash drive but stopped short, as if touching it would make the truth more real. Elizabeth plugged it into Vanessa's monitor, and within seconds, internal documents lit up the screen. Emails, video stills, meeting transcripts. There it was in black and white. Jason Washington enrolled in the Chrysalis protocol without full parental consent. Test logs, neurochemical data, side effect reports. All with her company's logo in the corner and her own digital signature on half the pages. She felt the air leave her lungs. Elizabeth didn't speak. She didn't need to. Vanessa remembered the protocol vaguely. Something pitched as revolutionary for nonverbal children, fast-tracked approvals. An executive summary so sanitized it read like a shampoo label. She'd signed it during a product launch week, barely looking up from her phone. He'd signed the devil's dotted line while texting her Pilates coach, her conscience whispered. Her mind reeled. This wasn't corporate oversight. This was negligence dressed in designer fabric. She had greenlit a program that used children as test cases, and now the brother of one of those children had been dining quietly at her table, documenting everything. Vanessa's vision blurred as memories twisted around her. Shareholder meetings where ethics were a footnote, fundraising galas where she smiled beside doctors who knew how to lie with charts. Elizabeth finally broke the silence. "Vanessa, it's not just about what happened. It's still happening. The protocol's active, right now, with Lucas." That hit harder than any headline ever could. Lucas, her son, her baby, inside the system she built. Then came the housekeeper's voice, crackling through the private line like it was crawling out of a storm. "Mrs. Collins, you need to come home right now. Dr. Washington he's in the main office. He locked the door and he activated the mansion's transmission system." Vanessa froze. "What system?" "All of them," the housekeeper whispered. every screen, every device. It's him. And Lucas, broadcasting. Vanessa and Elizabeth sprinted through the building like it was on fire. By the time they reached the elevator, phones were already buzzing, texts, news alerts, employees forwarding video links. He'd gone public, using her house as his stage. When she arrived, security was already outside the locked doors, helpless, facing the main office like it was a vault sealed with truth. Inside, on every monitor, Marcus sat beside Lucas, calm, composed. The wall behind him filled with printed documents, highlighted charts, and surveillance screenshots. Lucas, smiling, waved to the camera. "Hi, Mum," he said softly. "I'm helping Dr. Marcus save other children." The room spun. "Good afternoon, Vanessa," Marcus said into the camera, his voice firm but without venom. "I imagine you're watching. Don't worry, Lucas is perfectly safe. In fact, for the first time since beginning treatment at Horizon, he's truly safe." He stood and gestured to the evidence behind him like a professor unveiling a lesson. "What you're seeing is documentation of Project Chrysalis, an experimental neuroprotocol designed to rewire behavioral patterns in neurodivergent children using unapproved nanotech delivery systems. Marketed as revolutionary, operated without full transparency, funded in part by the Collins Medical Research Trust." The screen shifted to footage. Jason in a hospital bed. Clinical notes, lab reports, clips from Horizon security cams showing seizures, alarms, restrained children, drug doses administered without consultation. Vanessa clutched the armrest, her legs trembling. Marcus turned back to the camera. "This is Jason, my brother. He entered the program at age 4, died at age 12. What you didn't know, Vanessa, is that while I was helping Lucas communicate, I was also treating the damage your protocol inflicted. The improvements you saw, they weren't Horizon's success, they were my intervention." The video cut to Lucas again, smiling, engaged, solving math puzzles on a tablet Marcus had programmed. "Is recovering," Marcus said. "But not because of you. In spite of you." Outside the mansion, media trucks had gathered. Reporters shouted questions at the gates. Parents of Horizon patients held signs. Some cried. Some stared at the house with the kind of intensity that only comes from betrayal. The broadcast continued. "Today, I'm not just exposing the truth, I'm offering a solution." Behind Marcus, Lucas demonstrated exercises, apps, communication techniques. "We've developed a reversal protocol to reduce the cognitive damage. It's already been submitted to national health authorities and made available for free to all affected families. No paywalls, no NDAs. No more silence." Security finally opened the doors, and Vanessa stepped inside, face pale, hands clenched. On the screen, Marcus's final words landed like a sentence. "The era of ignorance ends today, Vanessa. Either join us in making it right or get out of the way." And by the time Vanessa reached the mansion, it wasn't a home anymore, it was a courtroom, and the judge had already taken his seat. And by the time Vanessa reached the mansion, it wasn't a home anymore, it was a courtroom, and the judge had already taken his seat. Vanessa stood in the center of her glass-walled office, surrounded by the debris of a life that used to be airtight. The screens had gone dark, but the damage pulsed through every silent device. Marcus hadn't just exposed Horizon, he'd exposed her. Not with malice, but with method. And now, the choice hung above her like a blade. Do I destroy the man who saved my son to protect the paper trail that killed his brother? Could she leverage her legal team, spin the story, drown the headlines with enough cash and counterclaims to muddy the waters? She had the power, she had the playbook. But for the first time in her life, she didn't know if she had the stomach. Because if she buried Marcus, she wouldn't just be protecting her name. She'd be burying the only man who ever made her son look her in the eyes and speak from somewhere deeper than survival. And that kind of truth doesn't vanish in a settlement, it stains. Behind her, the doors creaked open. She turned to see Lucas standing in the doorway, his small hand gripping the edge like it grounded him. He walked forward, slowly, stopping just a few feet away. "Are you mad at Dr. Marcus?" he asked. His voice was steady, but his eyes flickered with that old, flickering uncertainty. Vanessa crouched, met him at eye level, and didn't answer right away. He did something bad? Lucas asked again. No, she said finally, her voice thick. He did something right, but it hurt. Lucas looked down, then up. Mom? Dr. Marcus saved my brain, just like that, no script. No coaching, just the truth, soft but unbreakable. Her son, the one they said might never communicate meaningfully, had just delivered the closing argument in a trial she didn't know she'd already lost, and the jury was her own conscience. Elizabeth stepped inside next, slower, hands clasped in front of her. Her face was unreadable, but her eyes carried the weight of history. You knew, Vanessa said. Not a question, a statement. Not at first, Elizabeth replied. He came to me 2 months ago, asked for a second chance at his brother's story. I didn't know where it would lead, but the moment I saw Lucas change, I stopped asking who was right and started asking what was true. Vanessa turned away. So you chose him? Elizabeth stepped closer. No. I chose the kids. I stood by the system until I saw it devour children. You and I built a machine that called suffering a side effect. And I let it happen, but not anymore. Her voice didn't tremble. It rose, not with anger, but with clarity. Betrayal had no place here. This wasn't mutiny. This was mercy, long overdue. Then Marcus walked in. No cameras, no audience. Just him, holding a folder thick with documentation. Vanessa turned slowly. So now what? She asked. You want a press conference? A confession? Should I kneel? He didn't flinch, just placed the folder on her desk like it was a peace treaty or a loaded weapon. I want choice, he said. You can sue me, Vanessa. Burn this bridge. Call me reckless. Call me unhinged. You'll win the short game. You've got lawyers who eat men like me for breakfast. He paused, looking her dead in the eye. Or you can help me rebuild the whole damned highway. She said nothing. Lucas is proof it can work, Marcus continued. But we can't save one kid and pretend that's justice. There are hundreds, maybe thousands. We need your power without your silence. We need your access without your ego. You want to make it right? Then show the world what accountability looks like at full volume. The room fell into silence again, thick and sacred. Vanessa stared at the folder, at Lucas, at Elizabeth, then at the hands that had once written off entire lives in meetings that barely lasted 20 minutes. Hands that now trembled as they hovered over a decision that no shareholder vote could make for her. Her knees buckled. She reached for the nearest chair and collapsed into it like a tower folding into its own shadow. The woman who had once owned everything, airspace, legislation, influence, now had only one thing left to lose: herself. What she chose next wouldn't just decide her legacy, it would determine whether her son ever forgave her. 3 years later, the building that once bore Vanessa Collins' name in frosted glass now bore something else entirely. Chrysalis Reborn Foundation. No chrome, no marble opulence, just clean, open space filled with light, laughter, and something few had ever felt inside a Collins structure before: healing. In the courtyard, children played, some running, some flapping their hands, some humming math equations under their breath, and in the middle of it all sat Lucas, now 10, showing 2 younger boys how to decode emotional patterns using color-coded math tiles. His speech was fluid, his confidence firm, his joy unmistakable. Nearby, Marcus Washington watched from a bench, clipboard in hand, still as brilliant, still as patient, but this time surrounded by the legacy he was building instead of the one he had to break. He wasn't a waiter anymore. He was the scientific director of a global foundation. And Lucas, once considered unreachable, was now his co-teacher, his proof, his purpose. When Vanessa Collins walked into the Senate hearing room, every camera in the country turned to capture her steps. She wore no designer logo, no stylized armor, just a plain suit and a voice sharpened by 3 years of clarity. She stood before lawmakers, parents, reporters, and ghosts. The ghosts of spreadsheets signed too quickly, of children denied the chance her son got. And when she spoke, her voice didn't sell, it surrendered. I lost an empire, she began. But I gained a soul, and I'm here to say that one is worth infinitely more than the other. Behind her, screens displayed footage from the memorial wing of Chrysalis Reborn. Images of Jason Washington, smiling, framed in light. Below his photo, "So that no child is silenced again." Vanessa continued, her voice unwavering. "For years, I led with profit. I called it progress. I wrapped harm in language like innovation. I buried truth in footnotes. And when the consequences came knocking, they wore a name tag and carried a napkin." The room held its breath as she looked directly into the lens. "I was wrong, and this time, I want the world to see what it looks like when someone chooses to be right, no matter how late." Outside the hearing room, the story had already gone viral. Not because of scandal, but because of transformation. The press had tried to find cracks in the new foundation, but found only transparency. Marcus had made sure of that. He'd turned his grief into design, ensuring every policy, every therapy, every data point was ethical, public, and accountable. When asked why he didn't pursue legal revenge against Collins Enterprises, his answer became a tagline for the entire movement: "Because the roots of redemption grow through dirt, and I wasn't about to waste good soil on hate." He could have sued, could have destroyed, but he chose to rescue. Jason wouldn't come back, but dozens of children had. Parents from across the country brought letters, photos, hugs. Kids who once lived in silence were now learning to speak, to laugh, to count, to code. Marcus didn't wear a cape, but he had created a place where kids didn't have to be rescued. One quiet afternoon, after the hearings had died down and the reporters had moved on to the next spectacle, Lucas sat in the art room with a sketchbook. Vanessa walked in, carrying 2 coffees, one for her, one for Marcus. She froze when she saw what Lucas was drawing. 3 figures, holding hands. A boy in the middle, a man to his right, a woman to his left. No names, just smiles. She sat beside him, blinking back tears. "What's that, sweetheart?" He didn't look up, just kept shading gently. "Family," he said. One word. One truth. A word that had once felt like a performance, now felt like home. Later that evening, as the sun dipped low and the foundation lights flicked on across the campus, Vanessa stood at the edge of the courtyard, watching Marcus help a girl program her speech device. She thought of boardrooms and bonuses, of silence that cost millions, and a napkin that cost her everything but gave her more. She glanced at Lucas, still at the table, now laughing with another student, tapping on a tablet. And for the first time in decades, she felt full. Not powerful, not praised, just full. True wealth isn't what you build. It's what you rebuild when you choose what's right. And if this story made something stir in you, if it reminded you that redemption isn't weakness but wisdom, then share it, reflect on it, and remember, sometimes it takes losing everything to become exactly who you were meant to be. Because sometimes the most powerful thing a person can say isn't, "I built this," it's, "I rebuilt it right." Leave a comment below to let us know where you are watching from, and if you like fascinating stories like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we have another incredible story, and there are many surprises waiting for you in the next parts.